name's Jill Barnholtz-Sloan. I have a PhD in biostatistics, so statistics with the medical application. I've been doing cancer research since I was a graduate student. As a grad student, I started doing research in cancer epidemiology, so I've continued doing work in that space with a focus on brain tumors. And some of our current work is focused on sex differences in cancer. So we're doing work on sex differences in brain tumors, but we're also doing, other work with other people on sex differences in cancer.
Yeah.
Males get cancer more often, but females seem to have better survival after cancer diagnosis. And we don't really understand why that is. That's excluding, prostate or breast cancer, right?
Yeah.
Which are hormonally driven cancers. So, and I guess as a statistician, I've always dealt with data. That's sort of what we do, right? Data and analytics. And there was no such thing as data science when I was in grad school. So just over time in my career sort of morphed into, I guess, what I would call a data scientist. Now they have programs, you can go to college and get a degree in data science. And so I moved jobs to the National Cancer Institute 3 years ago. And I oversee a large team that focuses on informatics and data science for cancer. So we do everything data. We do common vocabulary, standardizing and harmonizing data sets, making data sets available through cloud computing platforms, analytics, the whole everything. And then I still actively do cancer epidemiology research.
Yeah.
In statistics, you can do theoretical statistics, okay? And then you can do kind of one of three of sort of applied statistical fields. So there's what I would call engineering statistics, which is a lot of like supply chain and quality control and those types of things.
Yeah.
My sense is that's still very male dominated. The second application would be business statistics. So this is something like, I don't know if you've ever heard people talk about like econometrics or forecasting or, so you would work for like a bank or a stock brokerage or, something like that. My sense is that's also more male dominated. I chose medical statistics as the application, and I think there are more and more females going into it. I think the one thing about my domain in biostatistics is there's a lot more jobs than there are people to fill those jobs. So it's, for the really good jobs, of course, you have a lot of competition. But if you are in some fields, the hardest thing is getting your first job, right? So that you can get the experience that you need to then use that as a jumping off point to get a better job. In biostatistics, getting your first job is typically not a problem.
Okay.
Just because of the supply and demand imbalance, right?
Okay.
And, a lot of statisticians now would call themselves data scientists. So,
Interesting.
Data science, I think, is meant to be, the difference would be data science is meant to be more of a melding of like statistics and analytics with computer science. Yeah. Okay. Whereas biostatistics is mathematics. It's more, less of the computer science stuff. For them to be that way, right?
Yeah.
So this is where the type of thing you're talking about with educating people can make a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have somebody who is mean-spirited and is just going to be saying things that are not helpful all the time, you can't really change them.
Yeah.
Right? But for the person who's saying something because maybe they heard their parents say it or they heard a friend say it, but they don't really quite understand what that means or how it might be interpreted, you can educate them and help them to look at things in a different way.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really important.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll make a difference.
I hope so. Oh, interesting question. Well, so I've always been really good at math. I think it's just the way that my brain works, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's one of those things where if you're lucky enough to sort of have the inner view of yourself as a young person and say, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not good at, right? And then try to make a path for yourself in the this is what I'm good at path. I think you're a lucky person, you know?
Yeah.
So I was always really good at math. I was one of the only girls that was good at math. Or at least that I knew. And so I originally wanted to go into architecture because I just thought buildings were so interesting.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a lot of mathematics, you know? Well, it turns out it's some mathematics, but it's mostly design and creativity.
Yeah.
And so when I went to college and I was taking my first semester architecture design class, and the professor takes us outside, we're in the middle of campus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's this open space between these two buildings. And he said, okay, see this open space? I mean, there's nothing there, right?
Yeah.
See this open space?
Okay.
I would like for you to develop a student center, a design for a student center to fit in this open space. And I just like freaked out. I was like, I can't do this. You know, I just don't see things that way. So then I switched to civil engineering, actually, because all the prerequisites are very similar for any of these STEM, disciplines. So it wasn't that hard to switch. And I enjoyed the classes, but I started working for a civil engineering firm in the town I was in. And I soon started to realize that it was all men, right? First of all. And that the man who was the principal for the whole firm, the only reason why he was the principal and he was doing something different all these years after he had graduated from college is because he had gone back and gotten his MBA. If he hadn't gone back and gotten his MBA, he would have been like one of the other senior engineers where they basically were doing the same thing for 15 years, and I was like, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah.
So then I switched to mathematics. My dad was really pissed at me because it was like fourth year of college and I switched again, and he was like, what are you doing? And I was going to school out of state. It was expensive, So my bachelor's degree is in mathematics. And then I realized, well, this is a problem because what am I going to do with a bachelor's degree in mathematics? I mean, it sounds cool to say to somebody, hey, my degree's in mathematics, right? Most people are like, wow, but practically, what do you do with it? I mean, so as part of the mathematics degree, we had 2 semesters that were required of mathematical statistics. And I was like, oh, I like statistics. I'll just apply to master's programs in statistics. Yeah. So I did that. And I did my master's in stats, but it was very theoretical. It was like a theoretical master's degree. And I was like, I can't do this. I mean, I had professors who were basically working on one theorem, one statistical theorem their entire career, and then they wrote a book about it. I'm like, no, cannot do that. This is going to kill me. So that was when I started to appreciate all those different applied statistical fields and started investigating and asking questions. And that was when I decided on medical statistics. And so I applied for PhD programs in medical statistics. And, I think at that point I realized that I was very interested in trying to be in the medical school environment and doing research and being a professor and all that. And so before coming to the National Cancer Institute, I was a professor at Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine. So, so I've mentored, folks from middle school, high school, undergrad, grad, medical school, nursing school, the whole gamut, junior faculty. So I was so excited to get your email. I'm always happy to talk to anybody who is interested in STEM.
I know, I was so
so that's how I ended up in statistics. It was not a straight line.
Yeah.
Well, I think they're both very scientifically driven, right? Organizations. They're both still academic, I would say, right? You're doing research, you're giving talks, you're meeting with people. The scope of what I do is very different. So at Case Western, I was a principal investigator. I wrote grants all the time. I had my own grants. I had my own research team. But it was small, right? It was a small team because your team can only be as big as you can afford, so if you don't have the grants coming in, you can't hire people. At the NCI, I have a big management job. I oversee about a $75 million budget, right? And about 30 federal employees, and we have about 300 contractors. So I don't do all that myself, but at the end of the day, I'm responsible for everything that the team is doing. So I wanted that opportunity to grow my career in that. I brought 2 people with me from Case Western on the research side. So we still have a small little research unit, and we're still actively doing cancer epidemiology work. But my real job is this big informatics and data science management job. And it's different. It's not a day-to-day research job, But I wanted that opportunity to grow my skill set in that way. So I was actively looking for, a job like that. I would say the job I have is equivalent to being like a department chair at a medical school or a college. Yeah. Well, look, I think anytime you apply for a job, you have no idea what your competition is, right? And as you rise up in your career, if you're interested in going to the next level of responsibility, many times everybody else that's applying also is very qualified, just like you, And so I think your challenge always is how do you advocate for yourself and present your best self without seeming arrogant, right? Because you can kind of walk that fine line. So it's, I think it's about being genuine. I think it's about being transparent. And I think it's about also recognizing that every person that you talk to is an individual. They have their own story, their own background, their own way of thinking. And, you have to, as you start in on your conversation with them, you have to be paying attention. You have to adjust the way that you're talking so that you can connect with them. Well, unfortunately, a bachelor's degree just doesn't mean as much as it used to. There just aren't a lot of really good jobs out there that you can have with a bachelor's degree. So most people I know are getting at least a master's degree. What I would say is try to start making connections with family members or friends who are physicians talking to them about what is your day-to-day life like, trying to shadow them so that you can actually see, because I do know people who have gone and like shadowed physicians and then said, this is not for me. And then they end up, but they still want to work in the medical field. So they instead go down the research path and do, a PhD in some field. Yeah. Right. So they're still getting that satisfaction of working in the medical field, but it's not medical school. Medical school is not for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, same advice I just gave, which is, look around you. Who in your school, who does your family know, who are friends who are in the STEM field. Try to talk to as many people as you can. Ask them these types of questions. Tell me about how you got to where you are. How did you make decisions about what degrees to get? How did you make decisions about what job to take? What are like the advantages and disadvantages? Tell me about what you do day to day, because I just think it helps to have all that information.
Yeah.